The fact that Russian economy relies for rent payments and internal corruption that comes a lot from oil and gas industry will have an impact on stability of the system, because Russian economy, in a way, is pre-modern. It's not so diversified. It's the scale of production of processed materials or machinery it sells raw materials, to the world, to China, India, Africa. So it will struggle to maintain regime stability.
Hello and welcome to Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. Now, today is day 1345 of Vladimir Putin's 10-day special military operation or full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And the front lines have stalled. Russia's economy seems to be burning out. But to get a real understanding, we're very fortunate to have an old friend of the show, Orysia Lutsevych, OBE. And now Orysia is the Deputy Director of the Russia and Eurasia Programme and head of the Ukraine Forum at Chatham House. Welcome back to Frontline.
Thank you very much. Great to be back.
Now, I sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek talked about a few things there in my introduction, but from a personal perspective and from a Chatham House perspective, where are we with Russia's illegal war with Ukraine?
Well, I think what has happened since the first days of invasion, where Russia planned for a quick military operation that failed because Ukraine put up a very substantial resistance. Then Russia put its eggs all in the basket of taking swiftly Donbass, and that has failed. And then they've basically declared a total war against Ukraine, shelling cities all across Ukraine, especially targeting energy infrastructure ahead of each winter. We've already seen this pattern last winter and this winter again. And they've really taken about 30% of Ukraine's gas generation capacity. So that impacts a lot of, as you can imagine, life in large cities and for the industry. But on the front line, Russia is bogged down. It is nearly making no progress, very small gains that it's not able to translate into some larger maneuver campaign. Ukrainians are managed to kind of backfill the shortage of artillery munition by drones, and now 80% of casualties that are on the battlefield for the infantry and equipment is done by the drones. So it's Russia's summer offensive has failed as well. So now Putin is on a more diplomatic offensive with Trump actually being so eager to end the war. I think this is where he focuses a lot of his effort. But there's still very active fighting going on, and we see nearly more than 100 direct combat encounters between the two armies along the front line in the east.
Well, we're hearing a lot of different stories coming out, and again, we'll get onto the strategic bit and relationship with Trump in a moment. But one of the things that has been coming out today a lot is Russia saying that it's about to close the cauldron around Pokrovsk, and Pokrovsk is about to fall. Are you getting that from your contacts inside Ukraine? Do you think Pokrovsk is at huge risk?
I mean, it's a military miracle that Pokrovsk is still standing, right? Russians have been going after Pokrovsk since April 2024, and it's a medium-sized town. Yes, it does have a strategic logistic importance for the supply of the rest of the front line. But yes, I do hear that Pokrovsk is likely to be taken, what's left of it, right? Because Russia is razing to the ground using these glide bombs, all the urban construction, and then it becomes unattainable to hold the ground, and then this is how they make encroachments into Ukraine. But yes, it's likely to fall.
The other two, and again, both of these are from a slightly negative perspective, pieces that have been in the papers in the last day or so, are in the Times, a piece that's discussing the European Union getting tired with supporting Ukraine financially, and there being no financial support coming out of the United States, and therefore Ukraine is almost in a position where it can only maintain its war for the next 6 months or so. And also tied in with that, and that was in the Times, in a sister publication in the Sun, talking about the difficulties with manpower for Ukraine going on the front line, and the way the Sun's defense editor describes how his fixer, a Ukrainian journalist, was arrested at a checkpoint they were going through and taken off to a recruitment center, and he didn't know what was happening to him. Are those indicative of real fears in the ground, or are those just examples of that are potentially been taken out of context slightly?
So let's just recap from the first question. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has settled into a full-scale industrial total war, right? It's not so the resources that both sides need to deploy to the battlefield and to the home front industrial defense base are enormous. And that means, there's, Ukraine's army is about 1 million if you count those in the, backfields, logistics, and those on the front line. And Russian army is huge, right? So this is where all these questions of manpower come in on both sides. But let's first take the question of finance. It is indeed if you look at for the nearly 4 years of war, right? We soon will be marking 4 years of war. Roughly 300 billion of all combined Western assistance was given to Ukraine. That doesn't impress me as a whole lot of money for this type of war. So given what is at stake, given that Ukraine is actually fighting the largest army on earth, with its industrial capacity and human capacity, we are talking about rather small resources that are channeled to Ukraine. But moreover, since United States stopped directly giving weapons from its stock as a grant to Ukraine, Europeans now have to buy those American weapons and deliver them to Ukraine. And this monthly supply or monthly financial allocation for that is decreasing. So on average, it was 3.5 billion a month. Right now, we are talking about 2.2 billion a month of euros. That means that, while the war is still in a very high intensity, what is available to Ukraine is decreasing. But Ukraine is rapidly compensating that external supply by internal production. And you have Ukrainian largest state-owned enterprise growing nearly 40%. You have more European governments investing directly or allocating resources for Ukrainians to procure its own Ukrainian-made equipment. And Ukraine makes some very good kit. You look at artillery shells, Bogdana, compared to French Caesar, it's cheaper. It can be done faster. So this is what saves Ukraine, that Ukraine didn't waste time waiting for all the Western assistance. It was scaling up its production, innovation, especially not in drones, but not only, as I said, in other types of kit as well.
And over the past few days, there've been a couple of very big defense deals announced. I think the Germans have said they're going to open through Rheinmetall an infantry fighting vehicle manufacturing capability inside Ukraine for its Marder infantry fighting vehicles. We saw a huge deal being done with Sweden over the Saab Gripen fighters, and them saying that they're going to open a factory inside Ukraine. Do you think what this is indicative of is a longer-term confidence in Ukraine's position, because these companies are going to invest in manufacturing output capability inside Ukraine itself?
Yes, I think that's the right interpretation. I think at this point, there's little doubt that Ukraine will exist as a sovereign European country, and that Ukraine is able to defend itself against Russian full-scale onslaught. I mean, Russia uses everything in conventional, I'm not talking nuclear, but everything in the conventional kits that exist against Ukraine. And that is why not only that Ukraine has manpower to produce economic, the model, the facilities, the logistics to the front line, but also it has innovation, it has technology, and we are in a technological arms race right now. And all these weapons have to be tested in real time, have to be adapted in real time. A lot of software underpinning this is changing every 3-4 weeks. So I would say yes. But maybe on manpower, because you asked me, what about manpower? It's a problem because if it is such a long attritional war, of course, the manpower will be a problem because at the beginning, a lot of Ukrainians volunteered. Ukraine had roughly 300,000 soldiers who had combat experience in the first Russian-Ukrainian war from 2014 to 2015. And then the stream of volunteers was depleting. The war. There's always in every society a limited number of people who are willing to fight. But Ukraine is experimenting with different models. There was a special program for young fighters between 18 to 21 with certain incentives. There is, for example, a way you can choose your brigade which you want to serve. But yeah, there's still quite a lot of coercive methods like the one you described with the fixer, where people are just stopped if they don't have the right documents. They're taken to the recruitment centers, trained, and assigned to the army. That happens.
Do you think we've got to a position now politically with what we've seen out of the European leaders and EU leaders, NATO leaders, that Europe can't afford Ukraine to fail?
Well, I think it's in a way both ways. Ukraine is not failing on its own, so kind of there is a strong partner to work with, and Putin cannot conquer Ukraine. It's as simple as that. Even with the state of the army that Ukraine has right now, which, if you think about at the beginning of the war, Ukraine was nearly disarmed neutral country. It had no collective security alliances. It had very limited army, and Russia launched a full-scale onslaught against it. So I think Europe understands that is the reality. And what is Europe's answer to that reality? Ukraine, by its resistance, compels Europe to mobilize. And let's also recall something significant that happens. It's the drone incursions into Poland, into Denmark, into Germany, into the airports in Norway. What we are seeing is that these gray zone operations that are linked to Russia, that are also, putting a cold shower into many capitals, understanding that in the West, in NATO, they do not have defense for this type of threat. It's not an open war with Russia where after such a drone attack, they launch missiles against the drone manufacturers in inland Russia. And Ukraine has some answers to that. And this is where Ukraine becomes an asset, not just a liability. And one thing we should mention for the UK listeners is also a new project here launched in the UK called the Octopus Interceptor. This is a drone that can intercept drones on air to air, and this will be produced in the UK, for Europe, and for Ukraine.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating to see that reach out. Now, if we look at it now then into what's happening in Russia, the Russian newspapers are becoming increasingly bold in their comments against what is happening to the Russian economy, against the control that the government is showing. We had Vladimir Putin yesterday sitting talking to many of his leaders and trying to give them a degree of confidence. I don't think there was anything of substance came out from what he said. But do you think that the pressure that Ukraine is putting on Russia by attacking the oil infrastructure and its ability to continue to fund the war, combined with the pressure that's coming from the US and other countries' sanctions against your large Russian oil and gas companies, and we're seeing that reflected into the shadow fleets and everything else, do you think that's going to have a negative effect on Putin? Do you think he's worried?
Yes, absolutely. I think so far, Putin's special operation around Trump to basically uh, get him get him on his side vis-a-vis his agenda, how the war should end in Ukraine, is failing because Trump understood many things, and the most important thing he understood is that Europe is not abandoning Ukraine. So that we can, like we've discussed before. Now, the fact that there are three factors. One is that there are new sanctions on large Russian oil companies, means that 80% of Russian oil export is now impacted, and it's toxic for Chinese companies who are very cautious of trading with these companies and Indian companies. So that is the new contingency that Russia has to deal with. Second, it's Ukrainian direct attacks on oil refineries and destroying equipment that Russia cannot get so easily to replace because of the sanction regime again. And it has attacked, I believe, 22 out of 38 large refineries. So the scale of it is quite large. And the fact that pressures are piling up on the Russian budget, where the interest rates are high, the industry is complaining that they cannot refinance their debt, that they are also struggling to get enough people to produce, and also the demand, even for if you take a basic metrics, which is the Lada, with the Russian car, the production is dropping for the first time in decades because the Russians are not buying it. So the but beyond this, the monetary impact, the budget impact, the fact that Russian economy relies for rent payments and internal corruption that comes a lot from oil and gas industry will have an impact on stability of the system, because Russian economy, in a way, is pre-modern. It's not so diversified. It's the scale of production of processed materials or machinery it sells raw materials, to the world, to China, India, Africa. So it will struggle to maintain regime stability. And this is very important because many people should understand that this is the only calculus that matters for Putin and for people around him, whether Russia is able to wage war and remain stable.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, and I think Putin fears the people rising up. But if we look at Russia, everyone thinks of Russia as a homogenous country. It's not. It's a federation, and the war with Ukraine is impacting different elements of the federation. From your personal perspective, but from a Chatham House perspective, are you picking up any rumblings in the different elements of the federation, and people who are becoming more and more disillusioned with Moscow?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I wouldn't call Russia, the way it's governed right now, a federation, but on paper, according to its constitution, it is. But it has more than 100 different nationalities, and some, like Tatarstan, Buryatia, they are more self-conscious and self-organized and have this autonomy within, at least on paper, within Russian federation. I think what is clear is that there's a disproportionate drafting, a disproportionate mobilization and recruitment in the poor regions of Russian Federation. And this doesn't touch so much big cities. And if that continues at some stage, I don't think we have reached that stage yet, because right now, I think because there's a lack of any other social progress for people, they decide that it's good deal to go and fight for money, even if it's lethal and so many of them die. They see it as a certain promotion in life, an opportunity. So Russia runs on a mercenary approach at this point, right? So I think there could be an issue of cohesion of Russian state at some stage, especially as these resources, as we have discussed, the pie will be diminishing, and loyalty that Moscow was usually buying from these regional elites, because I think in Russia, it's more elite politics than popular politics. This is where some of these regional chieftains and leaders may say, what's in it for us? If we all have all these oil and gas resources right here in Siberia, Why should we be dying for Moscow and not being able to run our local economy that could be as prosperous as Norway?
But do you think Putin's got himself into a really difficult position where he's got a smaller pot of money to be able to continue to fund the war, but he's got his economy based on a wartime economy, and he can't afford not to have the war, and therefore at some stage something's going to crack?
Well, look, Putin, I think he is obsessed with his historic legacy. It's not something where there could be a rational, I don't know, like a game theory applied, or SWOT, strengths and weaknesses analysis. Putin believes he can win this. Trump especially was not sending him enough signals that this is not winnable. He believes that he can split transatlantic unity, and that would be a win for him. And I think fundamentally, his fear or nightmare is, how will he run Russia without a war? And this is where it's unfortunate for Ukraine and for Europe that either this dangerous model is defeated, or in a way we will have to live with these consequences for a long time. The longer we procrastinate a strategic decision that Putinism as an ideology and that system of governance is dangerous for us and it must be defeated, the longer we prolong the war and buy out time for Putin to adjust and to mobilize his friends, Iran, China, North Korea, to come to his rescue. Because this is what is happening. Increasingly, he starts relying on these supplies for artillery, for people, for intelligence, and soon maybe for missiles.
Okay, to finish, I'm going to put you on the spot. What's Putin's next move going to be?
Oh, I think his next move is Trump. This is his best target, that he understands as a KGB agent how to manipulate human intelligence and how to use all the pressure points and vanity offensives in order to convince United States that it's not in its interest to back Europe and Ukraine, and that Putin is a friend, not an enemy.
Okay, well, Orysia, on that, we're going to have to get you back to analyse what Putin and Trump get up to on the next stage. But it's been fantastic talking to you today on Times Radio Frontline.
Thank you, Philip. Good to be with you.
You've been watching Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. If you'd like access to exclusive content, please subscribe to Times Radio membership and watch us on YouTube. But you can now get us as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And don't forget, you can also listen to Times Radio for the latest updates on global affairs and read about them at thetimes.com. Thank you.